very easy to say those things, a lot more difficult to believe them. To believe it, you need to know one thing. Is it true? Are you really precious? What makes something precious? Let's look at one of the most precious, naturally occurring metals known to man. Gold. Why is it precious? Because it's rare, hard to find. It also looks really good and takes a lot of work to get the stuff. These are mullock heaps. All the stuff the mining companies chuck away after they get the gold out. You might say, there are 7.7 billion people in this world. I'm not rare. Scientists have been photographing tiny snowflakes for 20, 30, 40 years or more. There are far more snowflakes in the world than there are people, and still they have never found two snowflakes the same. You are way more complex than a simple snowflake. There never has been, or will again, be another you. You are extremely rare. That makes you much more precious than any snowflake or nugget of gold. Now, I'm going to ask you to stand and read the declaration on the certificates you've been given. Let's all read this together. I, Steve Woodruff, am a very precious person. I was born precious, and even when I make a mistake, my value and worth does not change, regardless of whether my friends or even my parents agree. I, Steve Woodruff, am precious. Are you convinced yet? Perhaps I can tell you a few things about yourself to show you how incredible and amazing you truly are. All living things are made of cells. Cells are kind of like tiny bags of complex chemicals. There are many different types of cells. The pink ones are skin cells, the red ones are blood cells, and the one on the right is a neuron. This picture shows the different cells that all hold together to make a leaf. This is an actual photograph through a microscope showing the cells on the surface of a leaf. These are different types of white blood cells. This is a photograph of muscle cells. This fancy looking creature is a neuron. Most neurons are found in your brain. I'd like to talk a bit more about your brain. I want you to make two fists. No, we're not going to fight, especially not against Muhammad Ali. Put your two fists together. Your fists are about how big your brain is. Not very big, is it? Actually, it's kind of small compared to the rest of your body. It is about 2% of your body weight, but it uses 40% of your energy. About half of the brain are neurons, the thinking cells. The other half is glial cells, or helper cells. You have about 80 to 100 billion neurons in your brain. Neurons make connections to the other neurons. This connection is called a synapse, where the branchy bits of one neuron come close to another one. They can transfer signals across the gap. This is how thoughts are transferred through your brain. Neurons don't have just one synapse, each. They have many. Most neurons are found in your cerebral cortex, the outer covering of your brain. You can see it in the dark lines at the outside edges in this picture. It is about 2 to 4 millimeters thick. There are a little over 442 trillion connections in your cerebral cortex. Wow, that's a big number. Let's compare it to something a little bit smaller to help us show how big that number is. Scientists guess there are about 300 billion stars in the entire Milky Way galaxy. That's about 1,500 times more connections in your brain than there are stars in the Milky Way. Starting to feel amazing now? This is only part of the story. Neurons are just one type of cell. There are many different types of cells in your body, all joined together to form bigger and more complex things. They're a bit like building blocks. When different types of cells grow together, and especially when groups of different types of cells grow together, they can form incredibly complex things. Your heart, your liver, your eyeball. Your entire body is built of different types of cells growing together and next to each other, but all working together to make your entire body work correctly. Most of your cells hold your DNA inside them. Red blood cells are one of the types that don't. There are all sorts of bits and pieces inside your cells. Don't even try to read some of the labels on this diagram. The bit we want to look at is the orangey yellow bit, the nucleus. Inside the nucleus there's another group of different bits and pieces, but the bit we're really interested in are the chromosomes. Chromosomes hold your DNA. Chromosomes come in many different shapes. The most famous are X shapes and Y shapes. You get half of your chromosomes from your father and half from your mother. This combination ensures an incredible number of possibilities for your DNA. Some kids, girl or boy, are more like their father. Some kids are more like their mother. Some are not like their mother or father at all. When we start to unravel your chromosome, we find your DNA. It's built a bit like a twisted ladder. This special shape is called a double helix. Dr. Rosalind Franklin did some amazing pioneering research that directly led to the discovery of the double helix shape of DNA in 1962. I'm sure you've heard of it before, but what exactly is this DNA stuff? It is an incredibly complex system for storing information. All sorts of information. Your cell can read pieces of the DNA to make a protein or an amino acid, or how to combine proteins and amino acids and a whole bunch of other things to grow a cell. What type of cell it's going to be, where it's going to grow, and how many of them they're going to grow before it stops. Every minuscule detail about your entire body, from what colour your hair is or your eyes, whether you grow tall and thin, your skin colour, whether you grow broad and bulky like me, it's all written in your DNA. Perhaps the most amazing thing about DNA is it has all that information written using just 4 letters. Not the 26 letters we use to write English, just 4. A, T, G, and C. Bits inside your cell can read a section of your DNA, called a genome, to produce something particular that needs to make a human body. Sometimes it can read exactly the same genome backwards and make something completely different that also needs to make a body. How many books have you seen that has a sentence in it that you can read backwards and still make perfect sense? And to think so many people in this world believe that all the atoms and bits and pieces needed to make such an incredibly complex information system all fell together by pure accident. I'm sure you've been wondering, where does the name DNA come from? Scientists like to use complex words for things. Deoxyribonucleic acid. You can see where the letters DNA come from the capitals in that word. All living things have DNA. From trees to turnips to Tim standing just over there. A few interesting facts. DNA from one single cell, if you stretched it into a straight line, would be 1.8 meters long, almost as tall as me. DNA from all the cells in your body, stretched in the same way, would measure end to end 54 billion kilometers. With those kind of kilometers, you could travel to Pluto and back 4 million times. Scientists from Harvard University have been storing digital data on DNA since 2012 and believe that 1 gram of DNA can hold 215 petabytes of data. Haven't heard of petabytes? That is 215 million gigabytes. Or another way, 30,000 trillion hours of 4K UHD video. That would take you over 3.4 trillion years to watch without sleeping. You have over 50 grams of DNA in your body. A single cell contains about 6 petagrams of DNA, or 1 billionth of 1 gram. You could read about 20 gigabytes from it. Does that sound a lot from 6 1/billionth of a gram? Well, I actually read that wrong. From that amount of DNA, you can actually read 200 gigabytes of information. I'm sure you've heard people say that no two people anywhere in the world have exactly the same DNA. Police rely on this to make sure they catch the right person. But this is not exactly true. I'm sure you've met identical twins. They do have exactly the same DNA as the other. Some of them are so similar that even when they're standing together, you can't tell which is which. But quite a few of them have some notable differences. Nearly all of them have completely different personalities. Isn't that incredible? Even with the same DNA, building their bodies exactly the same, that they can be so different. This has got to be proof that no one is just one of the crowd amongst billions of other people. As complex as your bodies and minds are, no one is the same as you. No one who has ever lived is the same as you. No one who ever will live in the future will be the same as you. You are unique, incredibly rare, and therefore precious.